So to configure the master node, we need to first understand the installation method. They're basically, these steps have already been performed, um, which are actually not mandatory. It's all optional, but I did for my own sake. The installation method is pretty straightforward. One of them is called container plain mode, which means that all the four services, etcd, controller, scheduler, and API, will be running as a container instead of running as a service. So it's because if one of the service is bad, you just need to work on that container instead of you know uh, working on the entire application. So and these all four services are already provided as a package by Google, and the utility or the tool which is used to containerize that is called kubeadm. Uh, the other mode of deployment is system mode, where you install all the four services on the base operating system, and which is actually not recommended. So I have all these steps already in the backend with me, but where did I get all that is from here. So if you quickly go to the kubernetes.io, click on documentation, and the first step we have to do is install the kubeadm setup tool. So the kubeadm is responsible, or it's a utility, which we'll just see quickly, which containerizes. This is the configuration, minimum configuration it needs. We'll just skip all that. Um, and come to the part where it says Debian. I'm using Ubuntu, which is from the Debian family, so I'll be using this particular method to deploy that. So if you look at the steps, this is the part where it installs that. Ignore the rest of the services, which we will cover later on, but yeah, I just wanted to show you the documentation, how we do the install. Okay, let's follow what it is saying. You can also make a script for that and run it, but let's do the manual way. It has been updated. Let's install the certificate from Google. Um, Now this is the part where it's adding the repository. Make sure you copy things correctly. Update the box again. Now, before we move ahead, we are here to install the utility, which is kubeadm. I'll just quickly tell about it. kubeadm is actually containerizing the four services. Um, Kubelet is like an agent. So Kubelet is an agent which will be installed on the worker nodes as well as on the master node, because that's how they will sync together. The goal eventually would be to add the worker nodes to the master node, so that they can communicate the heartbeat together. kubectl is a command line interface which is for the Kubernetes. So we can do that now. You can have a read of this over here. I just quickly point you in the same document. It talks about what is what. Qmedium is the bootstrap for the cluster. It's a utility through which we will further install the four services. Kubelet is a component that runs on all the virtual machines in, not the virtual machines, on all the machines in the cluster, which is nodes, and CTL is the CLI. Now in the last command is about installing the runtime, because that's how you'll be able to see your containers. Now the command to install the containers uh, is pretty straightforward. Um, so it's kubeadm initialize. So this will actually by default containerize all the four services. But in our case, it's showing an error. It's because the minimum requirement for CPU for the master node is 2, but we are using 1. In that case, and also the firewall ports needs to be open up. That's what it is. It is talking about. So make sure the firewall ports are open up, uh, and I'll just say all over here and give it some time. You can say it's creating the pods. That's what it's saying, and it has done its job. So if you see, it says I've installed successfully. Um, but the other step is that to start your cluster, you need to make these settings. So let's do that. Then only it will let you run the commands. Now, if I run a command called kubectl get nodes, this is actually failing because I have not given the permissions this part. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'll do as it says. Quickly. I'll try to run the command nodes, and you can see kmaster, it's not ready, that's fine, but it is showing up when it was provisioned and what's the version.